This is Daniel from Raunow Consulting, and today I'm going to show you how to use the Selenium Python package for web scraping. This is a very useful package for this type of thing, especially in our situation where we're going to have to actually interact with the websites that we're getting information from, and we're going to use the information that we get to build a small Power BI report. A couple of things to mention about web scraping before we start. First of all, you can use this to actually programmatically interact with websites, but if you make too many calls to a site, it can potentially block the IP address that you're making the calls from, or alternatively, it's probably going to go into a routine where it tries to confirm that the IP address making the calls is actually operated by a human. Also, another thing to keep in mind with regards to the information that you're actually trying to get from the sites, sometimes maybe that information is not necessarily scrapable, so to speak. It's not going to be the case for the example of today. We're just going to use one of the sites we're going to use is Wikipedia. The other one is called the Metal Archives. They're both full of publicly available information, but if in doubt whether the information that you're scraping is subject to any maybe confidentiality or copyright laws or something like that, do bear in mind and try to speak with whomever owns or administers the site to make sure that whatever you're trying to get out from their site is actually available. So to start, let's go to the code. You can see here I'm importing the stuff that we need from the Selenium package. What the first thing that's important to do is to actually use this Chrome driver manager. We're basically going to be using the Chrome web browser to actually instantiate a driver object. This is basically the object that's going to interact with the website. Selenium is a really cool package in that regard because you can do all sorts of things. We're just going to be using it for normal web scraping. We just have to access a couple of specific elements that we can't access with a normal web scraper, but you can use Selenium for actually filling out forms or even testing websites. I think it's actually very widely used as an automated tool for testing. So after we've instantiated the driver, the first site we're going to access is Metal Archives, and what we're going to do is we're going to define the URL, and then we're going to use the driver's get method to we're basically going to open the site. That's why we have the 3 seconds of sleep here. Maybe 3 seconds is a bit overkill, but we have to basically make sure that we give the site some time to load. And what we're going to open, as I mentioned, is Metal Archives. I should have had this closed, but basically, so for example, here I have the Metal Archives page for bands by country for Denmark. You can see the URL here. You'll also notice that construction we have in the code. What we want to do from here is basically to get this number. So what are we going to do for that? Well, we have to check exactly where this is located. So we can just use Chrome's inspect, and we can see here that the text that actually contains this number is located in a div class that has this name. So if we go back to the code, you can see here that I'm actually using a method called findElement, and I'm using the X path to find that element, and this is the condition for the element. Basically, as I mentioned earlier, it has to contain the class called DataTable'sInfo. Now, findElement is going to get the first element that accomplishes these conditions. There's also a method called find elements that actually gets all of the elements that accomplish the condition. Once we have that element, we can use the get attribute method, and this is basically the actual web scraping where we're going to get the HTML code for that particular element. And we do a bit of processing, and we end up with the number of bands for Denmark that we will append to our list here. And you can see here that I have the country codes for what we're going to run on Metal Archives, and we're also going to get the population of these countries by using Wikipedia. Here the URL, we're going to use the demographics article. Here the URL is constructed like this, and we're basically going through the exact same method. Also, to actually be able to determine the XPath, we can go here. I already have it open, and you can see here that I have a TD class info box data that actually contains the number that I'm looking for. Something worth noting, you can see here that for Sweden I actually have a different condition for actually getting the population. This is because even though these articles should basically have the same structure, if I go to Sweden, you will see that there is a difference here. Let's just close this. If I inspect the population number, you can see here that this class, even though it's called infobox data, it has a lot more HTML in it. This is because actually just because of this little image that for some reason is only present in the Sweden article. So here we're going to have to process it a bit differently to actually get the number that we're looking for. This is also something to keep in mind, that if the website changes, you will have to adapt your code. Of course, probably there are some more dynamic ways of getting around that, but for the purposes of this example, we're just going to stick to very basic stuff. So after we get our population numbers, we append them to our population list, and then we're just going to create a simple table that contains the country, the number of bands per country, and the population of that country, and we're going to print that table. So now if I take this code, I can show you that we can actually run it directly in Power BI, because Power BI has a Python connector. And if I use this, you will notice here that it's going to be using you will have to have a Python installation on the system that you're running this on. And of course, there are options of configuring that. So we can just paste our script and let it run. You will notice, when the driver is instantiated, you can see that it actually even opens up a browser. It's going through the countries, it's getting the data. You can also set it up to leave this window open if for some reason you actually need it. Just wait for it to finish. Funnily enough, I've noticed that Power BI is actually, for some reason, it's actually going to run the script multiple times. At least it did when I first tried it out. Let's see if it's the same. Quite a lot of effort for only 5 rows. And let's just use that table to make a very simple visual. We're going to put in countries and the number of bands per country. It's not a surprising thing, given the population. And now we can save our report and publish it to the Power BI service. I'm just going to publish it to my workspace because I want to show you something else. You can see that our report is here. I can access it, I can view it, all's well and good, but we will have a problem because if I try to refresh the data for this report, you can see that the refresh failed. If I go and see the error, unable to refresh the model, it references an unsupported data source. Now, of course, maybe for some applications we can just stop here, but in most cases we probably want to have a Power BI report that can actually refresh the data. So we will have to find a way around this. And that will be the subject of next week's video. So stay tuned for that. But until then, thank you very much for your time and your attention, and see you on the next video.